Good morning. Okay, I was going to say no response at all. I'm Sammy Loudermilk. I'm the CEO of the Enterprise Center. We are a workforce development and community development nonprofit organization focused on technology and innovation. And I'm pleased to introduce our featured speaker this morning, Clint Walker with the Cybersecurity and Infrastructure Security Agency. Clint Walker is the cybersecurity advisor for Region 4, which covers the Southeast United States. As the CSA, Clint is the liaison between federal services and state, local, territorial, and tribal governments, critical infrastructure, and private industry. He serves as a focal point for communications to promote cyber preparedness, incident response, risk mitigation, and situational awareness. He provides direct coordination, outreach, and regional support in order to protect cyber components essential to the sustainability, preparedness, and protection of the nation's critical infrastructure and key resources. In other words, Clint is a busy man. Mr. Walker also held the position of Chief Information Security Officer for the National Air and Space Intelligence Center. In this role, he was responsible for the operational resiliency of classified networks and facilities in adherence with DoD standards and guidelines. Please join me in welcoming Clint Walker.
All right. Good morning, everybody. I am shocked you guys invited me back to speak again. All right. How many of you have heard of CISA before? Everybody? All right. So I'm going to keep standing in front of that, I'm sure. So my name is Clint Walker. I am actually the acting chief of cyber for Region 4 at the current moment. So as we keep expanding our role in our program, I'm in charge of a team of, I have 26 people. Well, I'm supposed to have 26 people. I currently only have 14 of those people in places. But we are in charge with going out there and being best friends to critical infrastructure, state and local governments, and critical infrastructure in order to help secure our nation's, assets. So this is me. I recently graduated. So last year I graduated with my master's in Homeland Security and Defense from the Naval Postgraduate School. This was actually one of the image here was taken as one of our assignments was we had to talk to AI and we had to so we were partnered up and we had to work with AI and you had to, using only words, describe your partner to AI and have it generate a picture of what they thought that person looked like. And this is what my partner thought I looked like based on just describing things to artificial intelligence or the AI model there. I think it did a pretty good job. So. But besides that, I've been doing cybersecurity for over 30 years. I started off in the automotive industry, moved to the banking industry, went to the intelligence community, worked for the Department of Health and Human Services, went back to private industry for a short 6-month term before the Department of Homeland Security asked me to come help them build this program. And I've been doing that for the last 11 years, and I've loved every second of it. So I really enjoy what I do, but I would love to put myself out of a job. I would love for the world to be more secure. So let me start all of this by asking all of you, how many of you feel more secure today than you did last year? Isn't that one thing that we've worked on? Isn't that the one thing that we're doing? We're all supposed to be doing more security. We talk about it. There's commercials about it. Everybody keeps talking about we're building a more secure future. Yet everybody I talk to, nobody feels more secure today than they did last year, 5 years ago, 10 years ago. Why is that? That's a question that we're going to look at here, as we move forward. And I really want this to be more of a conversation. I have slides, but I very rarely stick to them. You're going to see me fast forward through a lot of them. I'm external affairs' biggest nightmare because I usually get on stage and just start talking. I never even know what I'm going to say. But these are the obligatory CISA slides. We are the nation's risk managers. We are out here to try and help promote not only federal network protection, but also protecting cybersecurity or critical infrastructure across our nation's great assets out there. So when you really think about critical infrastructure, when you think about the 16 sectors of critical infrastructure, the federal government doesn't own or operate most of those critical infrastructure sectors. 80% of critical infrastructure is owned by the private sector and state and local governments. And yet we all rely on it, so it's got to be protected somehow. There are some places to do that, regulations are part of it and things like that, but we're really out there trying to help promote cybersecurity to make sure that even the smallest companies have access to resources and access to expertise that they normally wouldn't have access to. So that's actually my division in CISA. Is called the Integrated Operations Divisions, or IOD as we like to say. And our job is to actually work with all those partners, is to go out there and shake hands, kiss babies, and give people the help that they need to be those experts that we have. My program is called the Cybersecurity Advisor Program. We are Region 4 down here, so I cover 8 states. When we started this program, 11 years ago, it was just me. I covered 8 states all by my lonesome. Do you know how much critical infrastructure there is in Region 4? You notice that no other region has 8 states, right? There used to be data calls where they'd be like, hey, we need you to reach out and talk to the governor of every single state, and you have 1 week to do it. I'm like, okay, for the states that only have 3, that's easy. But when I have 8, you know how hard it is to get on 8 governor schedules? So that's some of the challenges we face. That's why we have a much larger field force these days than we used to have. Matter of fact, we have what we call cybersecurity coordinators. We have 1 in every state. They live in the state capitals. They work directly with the state. And then we also have cybersecurity advisors, and they work where the greatest collection of critical infrastructure would be. And we have those all over the nation, especially in Region 4. I've got a couple of vacancies at the current moment. Matter of fact, my Tennessee position is currently vacant, although I was just given permission by headquarters to fill that position. So I'm going to be starting my interviews for that actually next week. So I'll have somebody to introduce you to next year. All right. But this is the Cybersecurity Advisor Program. I'm just going to gloss over this because what we really do is we are looking at cyber preparedness. We want to help you what we call left of bang. We want to help you before something bad happens. We want to help you prepare. And we're going to do that through strategic messaging, working groups, partnerships, cyber assessments, and incident coordination. So all the things above incident coordination, those are all the things we want to do with you beforehand. We want to come out and do tabletop exercises with you. We want to do cyber assessments with you. We want to start talking to you about how you look, how you feel, what your fears are, so that we can start getting you help along those areas, so that we don't have to do incident coordination with you. But we are there should you have an issue, should you suffer an incident, we can definitely come out and still help you. The fun thing about everything I just said there, and I'll talk about this more toward the end, there's no charge for anything that we do. We are I can't use the term free, we're an already paid for asset for you. Your tax dollars have already paid for us. Please invite us out to come work with you. But let's start for the fun things. For those of you who saw me last year, this is the same. I start all of my slides with this, or all my presentations with this, is an homage to my father. Because my father told me that life is about the little things. My dad lived to embarrass me as much as possible when I was growing up, as most fathers do. I do that to my kids. But one of the things that he used to tell me is that life is about the little things. And this is one of his favorite stories before I'd go to bed at night. He'd tell me, for want of a nail. And for those of you who've never seen this before, it's without a horseshoe nail, you couldn't put the horseshoe on the horse. Without the horse being able to ride, you couldn't have a rider deliver a message. And because the message didn't get there, the battle was lost. And because you lost the battle, you lost the kingdom. All because of a horseshoe nail. The smallest thing caused the biggest catastrophe. I've updated this for today's world. It's because it's all about the data. It's all about data being in an asset that drives a process, that's part of a system, that is inside of an operation, that delivers a service, and without that service, you have no mission. All because of the data. And data can come in many different forms. For some of you, it's going to be the data that's in a person's head. How many of you have had somebody retire after 20 years and you wish you could have all that knowledge back on your plant floor again? Yeah, succession planning is part of what we call cybersecurity now. We're making sure that you have a way to retain as much knowledge from each of your employees as possible. We have, data that's in a computer, of course, data that's on a piece of paper. We have data that resides within different operating systems, data all across the globe, using expertise from other places, other people, different processes. All of that is what we're protecting. And it all starts at the smallest level. because even the smallest bit of data getting out can cause the biggest issue. Sometimes you want to keep data confidential. Sometimes you want data to be available. Sometimes you want data to be right. Sometimes you want all three of those things. After all, isn't that what cybersecurity is? Confidentiality, availability, and integrity, right? Sometimes you have to make a choice between those three. What are you really trying to protect and how are you trying to protect it? Each of your different operating lines, you want to have that discussion with them. Are we trying to keep your data available? Are we trying to keep your data confidential? Are we trying to keep your data correct? That's a difficult decision to have. You're trying to do all three, but sometimes you have to let one slide in order to make the other two possible. So, because this is what the threat actors see. They see that you have a business, that you have a mission. And that mission has people, information, technology, and facilities to make that happen. Those are what we call our 4 asset types. When we think that you're resilient, the way that we measure things at CISA is when we call you resilient is when you know what people have what access to what information using what technology and what facility at all times. Not some of the time, not part of the time, at all times. That's when you're really resilient. That's when you're really secure. Because a threat actor, all they have to do is take one thing away from you. A denial of service attack, a ransomware attack, they can take something away. Something, the smallest things, if they take away your technology. How many of you can do your job without technology? Is there anybody left in this room that can do their job without technology? No, very few jobs these days can be done without technology. Once they take that away, suddenly you don't have an operations. Without operations, you can't deliver a service, and without service, you've lost your mission. The average medium and small-sized business that gets hit with a ransomware attack, 60% of them, I think the last numbers that I saw, never recover, never completely recover. Within 2 to 3 years, they're either bought out, they either go bankrupt, or they just fold completely, all because of the ransomware attack. That's what we're looking at, is because one person took one thing away. And it doesn't have to be technology. It can be a person, it can be information, it can be a facility. You could lose your entire business because of one small thing. That is the world that we live in. This is the threat landscape. Yes, sir.
Another key point is time. How fast?
Oh, yeah.
So when we do incident response, we do like next day planning. We tell people if you have an attack today, assume you will be tomorrow night to recover. And they're like, oh, it's not that big a deal. But there's 56 minutes. Local company, 56 minutes. Incident ends, the whole country shut down. What do you do if you're not prepared for the next day?
I'll take you one further. How would you even know that you've been attacked? The average threat actor, from the last numbers that I saw, the average threat actor is within your network for 90 to 120 days before they initiate the attack that you can visually see. Before they start shutting stuff down, they're in your network. What could you do with 120 days of access to a company? That's what most organizations don't know. Most organizations don't even know they've been hacked until the threat actors do something that causes an outage or a shutdown or something like that. The threat actors are in there. They could be exfiltrating data. They could be changing data. They could be doing all kinds of things to the network, and you wouldn't know. For companies that they're trying to protect intellectual property, data exfiltration is the scariest thing. But imagine that you're a water company and the most critical data you have is the pH level or the acidity level or just how clean the water is. And if somebody can manipulate that so that your sensors show that the water is clean, but the water is really not clean, how dangerous is that? How much do we trust the very systems that we interact with on a day-to-day basis? When I used to do penetration testing and stuff like that, one of my favorite things to do, I once got tasked with trying to shut down an operations center, but I wasn't allowed to touch the computers. They tied my hand and said, you can't touch the computers directly, but we want you to shut their servers down. So I got into their industrial control, or I got into their, operations center. So through their HVAC systems, I got into their environmental control systems for the server room. And I set all of their sensors so that they would always read green, that everything was fine in the server room. And then I shut all the air conditioning off. And I let the temperature slowly rise. How many of you know how fast temperature rises in a server room without air conditioning? Yeah, within an hour, the servers were shutting themselves down because they were overheating. And the people kept looking at the screen saying, well, everything shows green, but nobody ever bothered to walk into the server room to see how hot it was getting. The servers just started shutting themselves down. That's what we're looking at, is in today's world, everything is automated, everything is electronic. We can start to see the chain reaction that something like that can have. Poisoning a water system, shutting down a power grid, making US steel a little less resilient than it was the day before. That's what the threat actors are after. It's not always about money, but we're going to talk about that in just a moment. This is today's risk landscape. This has changed a lot over the years, but in the last couple of years, it's stayed pretty steady on this. Although I would say that underneath each of these major headers, a lot of the individual parts underneath have changed quite a bit. We're still, of course, insider threat is still king. And I'm going to show that in just a moment. Insider threat is still your number one threat out there. Almost all cyber attacks start with an insider. Because these days, we don't just have what we used to call malicious insiders. Malicious insiders, of course, are still a bad thing. Those are people who want to do you harm because they're mad at you, they're disgruntled. Those are the things that are happening. But we also have the second tier of insider threat called the inadvertent insider. Those are the people who fall for phishing scams. Those are the people who don't want to follow your cybersecurity policies, or they wanted to find a quick workaround to do something. The number of times that we've gone in to do incident response and we found that somebody has done something to make their job easier, but nobody in IT knew about it. They've interconnected some things, or they set something up some way, and that's what the cause of the whole thing was. There was a major city that had an outage. A cybersecurity attack hit this major city and shut them down for several weeks. And when we went with them, we helped them, we did an investigation. What we found out is that there was one person who decided that they didn't want the firefighters for the city to have to go into the firehouse in order to input their time and attendance. So they allowed them to remote access in on a server or a service that nobody else in IT knew existed, and they used the password 123. Open to the internet, and that's how the threat actors got in, because somebody wanted to make somebody's life convenient so that they didn't have to have people coming. Now, if they'd just gone to IT and said, can we find a solution for this, I'm sure they would have found something. But instead, they just took it upon themselves because they thought it was too slow or it took too much time. That's the kind of thing that we're looking at. I once did an assessment for a hospital, and this hospital had fantastic cybersecurity. I mean, they were a model of what you should be doing up to a point. Because as I started looking around the hospital, I started saying, wow, you guys are doing really well. Do you mind if I go around and start interviewing some of the doctors and some of the people who work here so I can use this as a testament to how other hospitals should do this? And as I started walking around the hospital, I started noticing that doctors were using their phones a lot, and that there were a lot of people that doing things. I was like, wait, what's going on? So when I started talking to the doctors, I was like, hey, I noticed you're using your phone. They're like, oh, our IT department has everything locked down so much that I find it's just a hassle to use it, so I'm doing everything through my phone. So they're sending patient data, taking pictures of their patient, doing all their records through an unsecured device over a cloud service with no security protections whatsoever. Because they made it too hard for them to do their job, they decided to bypass it. That's the insider threat. It's not always somebody looking to do malicious activity, it's somebody looking to do their job. Because as my first mentor used to tell me, salesperson's got to sell. Meaning that a salesperson will get fired if they don't meet their sales goal, right? Will they get fired if they have a cybersecurity incident? Not at most companies. Most companies will get a slap on the wrist. And yet that one gaffe that they did in order to make that sale, that one way they bypassed, could bankrupt the entire company. That's what we really look at with these, is insider threat. And I'm going to talk a little bit more about this in the next slide, so I don't want to get ahead of myself, because it bleeds into our second area, which is acts of terrorism. We live in a very scary world. We live in a world in which we have been shown that terrorists can attack us not only physically, but they can now also attack us through cyber. They can attempt to do things for us. We used to think that terrorism was other countries' problems, right? And then 9/11 happened and showed that, hey, we can be a target of terrorism too. And now cyber terrorism is just the next evolution of all of that. Them attacking our power grid, them attacking our water supply, the things that they can do through all of that. Cyber attacks, of course, just keep getting more and more complicated. They keep getting more and more advanced, and we can throw artificial intelligence and quantum computing into that mix. Extreme weather. How many of you can say that the weather's been a very stable thing over the last couple of years, right? Hurricanes, tornadoes, heat waves, all of these things, polar ice caps melting. Extreme weather is a real issue, and we're finding it more and more as we look at things, especially become more dependent on power. We're finding it harder and harder to generate that much power, especially with all the extreme weather that's out there. And then, of course, we have pandemics and then accidents or technical failures. I know that all of you have probably had that backhoe that's cut your cable connection at one point or time, right? It's happened to all of us. But let's talk about the threat actors. We've talked about the threats themselves, but let's look at threat actors. And I really want to focus on this first group first, is hacktivism. How many of you have heard of hacktivism? Yeah. Have you heard anything good about them? Because hacktivism is people with a cause, right? How many of you would say that every person that works for your organization, their job is the most important thing in their life? You'd be willing to bet your career that everybody's job is the most important thing to them. More important than their race, more important than their religion, more important than their ideologies, more important than their politics. Think about the polarizing world that we live in right now. Think about, I'm just going to bring this up, think about that there's two nations, say Israel and Palestine, and you've got a worker inside your organization from both sides. You think that they might get mad if somebody is above them that believes in something else and says something publicly, or if the company comes out and supports one side or the other when those people work for you? Do you think they become an insider threat? A lot of the threat actors that we're seeing, the inadvertent threat actors, we see that the social engineering twist is starting to focus on these ideologies for organizations, trying to find people within an organization and hit them in their ideologies in order to make them do things. Trying to, make it say, hey, you support this group, we support that group. Can you give us access to X, or can you help us do Y? And a lot of them think that they're helping further a cause, and that's what they're doing. Then you start to throw in your criminal actors are still there. The insider threat can be along with all of these. But let's talk a little bit about espionage. How many of you would say that espionage is a major issue for the United States? How many of you say espionage is a major issue for everybody outside of the federal government for the United States? Espionage is a big thing. There are countries out there, there are nation states that want access to the things that we have, and they're willing to do whatever it takes to do it. There's been recent reports of, say, an organization or a nation state, especially medium and small-sized businesses. Let's say that I have a processor that is U.S. advanced technology, but we use it a lot here. It's in commercial products and things like that, but it's got a no export rule based on it. We're not allowed to export that to any country that we don't deem friendly because we don't want that technology to fall in their hands. So these nation state actors then find medium and small businesses and say, hey, we want you to develop something, not for us, but for another company, and we want you to put that processor in it. And then we want you to send it through quality control, but it's going to route through our country. So they're trying to find loopholes around extradition or these things in order to get access to this technology, and they're using small and medium-sized businesses to try and do it. They're trying to gain access to companies that have these technologies. They're sending people over in order to work at these companies when they're actually funneling everything back to their particular country. That's what we're looking at for espionage. They're not targeting the federal government anymore. They're targeting private industry. They're targeting critical infrastructure. And a lot of critical infrastructure I talk to say, well, what do we have that they really want? Well, you have methodologies. You have processes. They want to see how a nuclear power plant in the United States works. They want to see how our power grid works. Not just because they can mimic it or they can do something with it, but because so they know how to attack us as well. So they have inside knowledge on what technologies we're using and how they can use that to their advantage. Which brings us to terrorism and warfare, because that's what they want to use that knowledge in order to do. Up to this point in time, there has not been a war started because of a cyber attack, but the last several wars have all started with a cyber attack. You hit them with cyber to take out their communications, their ability to do things. The Ukraine war, the Russians hit them with a cyber attack before boots ever hit the ground. That's the new way to wage war, is you start with a cyber attack. And you can only do that if you have knowledge of how the other organizations, how the other countries, how their other critical infrastructure operate. I'm going to keep walking too close to that thing, I know it. All right. So let's talk a little bit about technical debt. How many of you understand the term technical debt? So technical debt is the accumulation of shortcuts, outdated systems. This is all those things that it's too costly to replace all of these things, or as I like to say, this is how we've always done it. This is how we've always done it is your technical debt. All those legacy systems, all those outdated processes, devices with firmware that you can't update. And when you start to think about it, a lot of people are like, well, we try and update everything. And I'm like, okay, when was the last time you updated your elevator? And people are like, well, I don't think I've ever updated my elevator. I was like, well, is your elevator connected to your network? Well, I don't know. And then they go and look and like, well, wow, my elevator really is connected to my network because somebody has to do remote maintenance on it if they need to. And wow, that firmware is really old. So somebody's hiding out in their elevator systems in order to attack their network. Do you really know what's attached to your network? Have you seen all the devices out there? Environmental control systems, badge access systems, camera systems, robotics, all of your OT systems, your IoT systems. How many of those are your technical debt? How many of those are legacy systems or things that you don't even use anymore? Things that you didn't even know were interconnected? That's what we're talking about here. No encryption at rest, shadow IT systems. How many of you would know if there were shadow IT systems on your network? How many of you scan internally? I know that you know. Shadow IT is one of the biggest issues that we see when it comes to incident response. I'm sure you could attest to this as well. Almost a lot of the incidents that we see come down to shadow IT. A device that's on the network that nobody knew was there, that somebody had put in. It has a backdoor or it has a password that nobody bothered to change. It's still the default password, which is admin, and that's how the threat actors got in. So that's what we're looking at with technical debt. So pop quiz here. The average household has between 26 and 36 devices that are network connected in their house. And I can see all of your eyes suddenly rolling up in your head, starting to think of how many devices you have in your own home. And after you get past 10, you're going to be like, okay, let's just assume it's 26 to 36. When you think about every phone in your house, when you think about every TV that has internet connection, your Nest thermostat, your Ring doorbell, all of your iPads, all of your Xboxes, Switch, PlayStations, you start to see that those number of devices comes up. And you start to think, wow, who's patching all of that stuff? But then let's take it a step further. How many online accounts does the average American have? The average American has 100 accounts. The average American, how many of you have seen those commercials? I think it's a Rockage Mortgage or commercial or something like that saying, hey, did you know you have 2 Netflix accounts or something like that? The average American has 100 accounts, but only about 38 of them are actively in their mind accounts. They signed up for a library account and forgot about it. They signed up for a free trial on something and then forgot about it. But they have all of these accounts out there. And those are all avenues to get into that person or to get information from them. And I'll have a slide later on. You can start to think about the slide later on that says, of these 100 accounts, how many of them have unique passwords? So think about that one until we get down to it. Let's switch gears a little bit. How many of you are prepared for quantum computing? Not a single hand goes up. How many of you even know what quantum computing is? I'm not going to get into that discussion, but quantum computing is the next evolution of computing. It's basically going to make everything, we'll just put it in layman's terms as fast. It's going to make things faster, better, more in-depth. It's going to be a godsend to a lot of different fields out there, especially the medical field. But one of the things about quantum computing is going to do things at such speeds and at such high rate that all of our modern day, or at least up until several years ago, encryption is going to become obsolete. So one of the pushes that we have, one of the things that we've been promoting, I know you guys heard me say it last year, is you need to start looking at every place in your organization that uses encryption, whether that's encryption in transit, encryption at rest, and you need to start saying, is this quantum ready? Because I tell you, it's a race right now, and it's a race between all the countries of the world to see who's going to get quantum computing first. Because I can guarantee you that if another nation state gets it first, they might not let anybody else in the world know about it as they break everybody else's encryption and start to, I was with a company last year, and sorry, every now and then just an idea pops into my head, but I was with a company last year, and we were going through, they had an incident, and a lot of data was exfiltrated. And the CEO of the company and I were sitting there and we were talking, and he's like, I don't understand, because all the data they exfiltrated is all data that is encrypted at rest. And he just couldn't get out of his head why they want to steal all this encrypted data. And I pointed to quantum computing. I say, because they can steal it today and they can break it tomorrow. It doesn't matter. A lot of that data is intellectual property. That data is going to be data that they don't care whether it takes them 1 year, 2 years, or 3 years to break it, but they're going to break it. They're waiting. They're hoping. There are nation states out there stealing as much data as possible, knowing that once they hit the quantum divide, that they're going to be able to start breaking that encryption that you have on there, and then that data is going to all become relevant to them. They don't care that it's encrypted today. They're thinking about it for tomorrow. That's the thing about quantum, is it's going to give whoever develops it first, and in quantum is every day there's new breakthroughs in quantum. It's getting closer and closer to what we'll say is in a steady state, or a state that they can actively put it out to people. I know that the city of Chattanooga is using a lot of quantum encryption and stuff like that, but quantum computing as a whole is really coming around the corner. It's going to be here sooner than we think. So that's your first homework, is to go out there and find out all the encryption you use in your organization and ask the question, are we quantum ready? Sorry, I'm not allowed to talk about that. That's my slide that was supposed to be deleted. So what's that? It was important, but I've been told I'm not allowed to talk about it. So how are you targeted? You notice it doesn't say, are you targeted? It says, how are you targeted? Because this is what the threat actors have figured out. They don't have to attack companies directly anymore. They can attack individuals at company. So although I'm not allowed to talk about artificial intelligence as a whole, I can talk about artificial intelligence in little snippets. And one of the things I can tell you is that the threat actors have embraced artificial intelligence. I got to witness a system recently that a threat actor came up with, that a threat actor can type in the name of an organization. So let's pick a company, ABC, and they can say, I want to attack company ABC. And that's all they have to say to this AI. And this AI will be like, oh, company ABC has 2,700 employees. Those 2,700 employees are stretched out across 17 geographically located sites. Here are their cloud services that they use. Here's their IP range. Here's everything that I know about those companies. Oh, here's their C-suite. Here's everything we know about their C-suite. Here's their C-suite's Facebook page, their Instagram page. Here's everybody that works in a position of interest. Of those 2,700 employees, I think that 57 of those employees are ripe for social engineering. Here's who you're going to target. Here's exactly how you're going to target them. You're not going to target them at their work. You're going to target them in their home, and this is how you're going to do it. What used to take me months and months of recon ability to do for a pen test, they can now do in 10 minutes with an artificial intelligence system, which not only tells them exactly how they're going to attack that organization, it tells them exactly who in that organization they can attack and exactly how to do it. They'll say, hey, Clint Walker really likes the Pittsburgh Steelers. If you want to get in Clint Walker's good graces, you're going to talk to him about Pittsburgh Steelers. You're going to hit him up on Facebook. You're going to talk about this. You're going to join these groups. Matter of fact, I have bots already set up talking on those groups. You're going to take over one of those bots and actually start to interface with him. And then you're going to invite him over here. You're going to get him on LinkedIn. And then you're going to get him to give you what you need to know on this. That's how easy it has gotten. How many of you heard about the MGM hack last year? Yeah. The MGM hack was something very similar to that. The threat actor actually just got on LinkedIn and claimed that he worked for MGM. He started socializing with all the people who worked for MGM, and he asked one of them saying, hey, my account is acting up. Who should I contact at MGM in order to get my account created or my account taken care of? And they said, oh, you need to contact this person. He goes, oh, what information should I have ready when I contact that person? They're like, oh, here's all the questions they're going to ask you. Here's how you should answer if you want the fastest, access possible, if you want them to take care of you. So that person called up everybody on the MGM, on his LinkedIn, vouched for him to the company. So they created an account for the guy and got him network access. And that's how he actually got in and attacked him. Completely social engineered, all through LinkedIn. How many of you have ever looked for your own company's name to see everybody who claims they work for your company? How many of you say that everybody on that list actually works for your company? There's a lot of imposters out there. I actually once was working with an executive, and he was telling me, he's like, yeah, I don't even have a Facebook account. I don't have a LinkedIn account. He's like, because I want to protect myself. And I said, well, if you don't have an account for yourself, somebody has an account on your behalf. So he went out there and he looked, and sure and behold, using his picture, his information, somebody was impersonating him and actually interfacing with his own staff and trying to get them to send him gift cards and things like that based on his LinkedIn account that he didn't even have. If you don't own your own persona, somebody else owns it for you, and they're using it to their advantage. And these are all the different ways that they're doing it. That's a whole lot of ground to cover. There's a whole new discipline coming out. I'm finding more and more high-level companies are moving with what they call executive protection. So they've always had executive protection, like armed people who will walk around and bodyguard for their high-level execs. But now they have cyber executive protection, where they're going around and bulletproofing all their social media and their entire online presence in order to protect their C-suite from cyber impersonation and cyber defamation. It's a growing industry as we talk. So, we've already kind of talked about all of this stuff. Oh, SIM swapping, I won't even get into that. You've all read The Art of War, right? I'm not the only really geeky person in here, am I? So if you haven't read The Art of War, I do highly suggest the book. It has a lot of good info, but this is just one of those things. If you know your enemy and yourself, you need not fear the results of 100 battles. If you know yourself but not the enemy, for every victory gained, you will also suffer a defeat. If you know neither the enemy nor yourself, you will succumb in every battle. When you look at this from a corporate standpoint, I ask every corporation that I go to talk to, every time I walk in, I look at them, I say, who are you? And a lot of them, it's the way that I say who are you might be like, do you have a network diagram? Do you have a data flow diagram? Do you know what you look like from a hacker's perspective? Most organizations can't answer any of those questions. They give me a network diagram, but the very first thing that comes out of their mouth, what's the first thing they say when they hand you a network diagram? It's not accurate. So that means if you have a network diagram that's not accurate or not up to date, that means that you're making business decisions on an outdated document. If your troop movements aren't in the right place, you don't have your artillery set up the right way, how are you building a battle plan if you don't know where your assets are? If you don't even know what your assets you're supposed to be protecting? That's what we're currently looking at. If you don't know yourself, and most organizations don't know themselves, they don't know what they're trying to protect or how they're trying to protect it. So that's what you need to take out of this slide. And the other side of that is once you know yourself, you need to know the threat actors out there. That's where you come in as a community. You need to be talking with each other. You need to have some sort of intelligence. CISA, we send out alerts and advisories all the time. We're trying to give you updates, trying to let you know what the threat actors are doing. We're trying to give you that intelligence. But there's other companies out there that do it as well. Or just talk to each other about what you're seeing, how you're seeing the bad guys out there. What threats are there to your specific industry, to your specific area? Because this is the mechanics of a cyber attack. There's going to be some sort of external reconnaissance. This used to take months and months of time, but now a threat actor can do it, as I said, with using AI, they can do it within minutes. We have literally seen evidence where somebody, a CEO of a company, has said something in front of a news camera or was quoted in a newspaper or a news article somewhere, and within 10 minutes, we can already see the hacktivists or the nation states targeting that particular entity. Do you know how fast it was once we went to war with a nation state that nation state's threat actors started targeting our critical infrastructure? They didn't have to wait 2 or 3 months on this reconnaissance period. They already had the data ready to go. And then that initial compromise, whether it be through an insider, whether it be through an actual exploit, a zero-day vulnerability. We see very few zero-day vulnerabilities. We mostly see things that are on our KEV list or the known exploitable exploitations and vulnerability list. Things that have had a patch for years, that's how the threat actors are getting in. Then they're going to escalate permissions. They're going to move laterally through your network. This is the area here where they're taking 90 to 120 days, moving laterally through your network, trying to find out where everything is, how everything works, and then they're going to complete their mission. Sometimes that mission is going to be data exfiltration. Sometimes that mission is going to be denying you an asset, such as a ransomware attack or denial of service attack. And sometimes their mission is just to sit in your network and change data, to manipulate the data to their advantage. Maybe it's to make your particular product not as good as it should be, or to delay your production lines as much as possible. If you go back to the Stuxnet virus that was used against, the Iranians back in the day, Stuxnet was not designed to destroy their capabilities to enrich uranium. It was designed to slow them down. The reason being is if it destroyed them, they could just build new ones and be back up and operational. But if you slowed them down, they might not ever know something was wrong. And if you degraded it enough, you could have kept slowing them down more and more over time so that they would never reach their goal. This is a tactic we see a lot of nation states using, is they want to get into networks, they want to get in to degrade the networks or to degrade the service to slow down production. Maybe you could have built 100 cars that day, but instead you only built 99. They can keep degrading you over and over time or making something less durable. We don't need to look at that. And they're not doing it just to you. They're looking at your entire supply chain. This is technically called island hopping. I used to call it the Kevin Bacon attack, because I would never attack you directly. I would look at who all you did business with, who was the smallest company that you did business with, because I knew they didn't have as good a cybersecurity group. So I would attack them, and then I would use their systems to attack somebody else. This company here probably has direct connection to multiple other companies. If you look at the Target hack several years ago, Target was not hacked directly. Target was hacked through their HVAC company. Somebody got into their HVAC vendor. Their HVAC vendor had a direct connection in order to do maintenance of their HVAC system. And then they used that network, because it was a trusted network, to then move over. If you have a trusted connection with one of your suppliers or one of your vendors, if I get into their network, guess what? I now have a straight line over to your network, and you consider me trusted traffic, and I can do whatever I want. That's what the threat actors are looking at. They're looking at how can I get into your network and I don't have to attack you directly. I can go through some of your intermediaries. I can look at your supply chains. One of the things that they're really looking at doing, especially these nation states, is they're looking at getting something into your supplier. So let's say that I want to get into one of these big companies. I can actually start working with a small or medium-sized business and say, hey, we're gonna help you win the bid to start developing something for company over here, but we want you to embed some of our code into it, or we're gonna help you develop that code, or we're gonna put a back door in. And so everything that you're distributing or that you're giving over to here is gonna have a back door so they can get into every other company. There's a major sting a couple of years ago from the FBI where they took down one of the largest point of sale vendors in Jacksonville, Florida, because they found that they were putting back doors into all their point of sale systems in order to allow a nation state access. Imagine a point of sale system. So we're talking about all of these places across the country that have these point of sale systems that they now have back doors into their main network. All right. So your other homework, I'm going to show you all these typhoons. I only have 5 minutes left, but there's lots of typhoons out there. So Volt Typhoon, this is a nation state that's focusing on critical U.S. infrastructure, communications, energy, transportation. If you want to read up on Salt Typhoon, they're going after telecommunications and internet service providers. If you want to read about Flax Typhoon, this one currently is only targeting Taiwan, but you might see it, but this is actually going after critical manufacturing. So I think that Taiwan is their test bed. You might start to see this bleed out to the rest of the world as well. And then, of course, you've got Brass Typhoon, and this is a lot of the injecting malicious code into legitimate software supply chain. So that last one that I talked about is your Brass Typhoon. So there's a lot of different typhoons out there. These are your threat actors. These are the nation states. These are the state-sponsored groups that are coming after you. So we can talk about that. Like I said, I have a lot of slides because I didn't know where the conversation was going to take us. I just wanted to point this one out real quick because a lot of people, when we talk about threats to critical infrastructure, we talk about the number of incidents or the ransomware incident that we've seen. If you look at this chart, most people think, oh, if I said who's the number one target for ransomware, a lot of people would say they thought it was, information technology or financial services. But look over here at 258, that's critical manufacturing. I know you can't read that down there, but that really big bar, that's critical manufacturing, is the number one target for ransomware attacks. So blah, blah, blah. Are we there yet? It's not all doom and gloom. This is the part where I say, my name is Clint Walker. I'm from the federal government, and I'm here to help. We are here to help you build resiliency. So we don't do that in a vacuum. We really want to get to know you. I'm not just up here giving lip service to that either. My team really wants to come out and start working with you. Joe Parker is my person in Huntsville, Alabama. I'm getting ready to put a cybersecurity coordinator in Nashville, Tennessee. We really want to get to know you. I've got a large team. I've got people all over my region that can come out and start assisting you. We want to be able to turn those clouds into the silver lining that you see and to start working with you. We want to collaborate with you. One of the ways that we've done this, and I know that I started talking about this as a pilot program last year, but we do what we call pre-ransomware notifications, or PRNIs for short. I'm going to flip to the next slide here because I want you to look down here. Within the last 2 years, or I guess now 4 years, we've done 4,768 pre-ransomware notifications and have prevented $10.5 billion in damages. What this is we have a community set up. So we work with the intelligence community, and not just the federal intelligence community. We're working with private sector intelligence communities as well as national intelligence communities from other countries, where if they see something, so like if they see an IP address beaconing out to something that they're monitoring, they contact us at CISA and they say, hey, we think that there's a threat actor already inside this network. Can you call them up and let them know? So this is where my team, we pick up a phone and we call you and say, my name is Clint Walker, I'm with the federal government. We think you have a situation. We need to talk to you in an out-of-band resource because we don't want to send an email to your company email where the threat actors might be able to see it or understand that you're working with us. So we're going to talk to you in an out-of-band method, but we're going to identify ourselves. You can always call your local FBI office or you can call us up at CISA Central and say, can you validate that Clint is who he says he is? And they'll be like, yes, Clint Walker is who he says he is, and he is trying to actively notify you about a PRNI. Where we'll say, hey, I've got intelligence and I've got threat indicators to say that you have a compromised computer on your network. If we act now, we can get it off your network. And we will work with you from start to finish to make sure that that thing is taken down or that it's either proved to be a false positive or a false negative. So that is one of the big things that we've done. And I will tell you that a lot of these things of these 4,768, the very first thing I get when I call them is hung up on. A lot of times it takes me calling their partners or calling somebody else to say, hey, can you please get me in touch? Can you please vouch that I am who I say I am so that they will actually work with me? This is imminent because literally sometimes within these cases, I've actually literally started talking to the person as we saw the threat actor start to pull the string to initiate the ransomware attack. So the second part of this is what we call our vulnerability warning pilot. This is the next stage. Now we're taking it one step further where we're saying, hey, if we see that you have a vulnerability, so during the scans that are performed not by us, but by third parties, if they see that you have a vulnerability based on some of the internet scans that they have, and they let us know, and it identifies as something on the KEV list, meaning that there's a known threat actor out there exploiting it right now, we will call you to say, hey, were you aware that you have something that threat actors are currently exploiting that is facing the internet? Do you want our assistance in helping you take care of that? Is there any way you can patch it, or are there other remediation efforts? So this is the new thing that we're doing too, is we're notifying you to let you know that you have something visible to the internet that makes the threat actors very, very happy. So other than that though, we also want to build partnerships with you. We want to be that rising sun for you. You guys all know about updating software and all this fun stuff. But we want to come out and do tabletop exercise with you. If you take nothing else away from this thing, please let us know that we can do a tabletop exercise with you. That is the single best thing you can do for your organization, is to sit all of your decision makers down and walk them through a really bad day. And I tell you, I'll come up with a scenario that'll make it a really bad day. I've seen an awful lot. And everybody usually tells me, oh, we like our incident response plan, until they sit down with me and then they're like, we don't really like our incident response plan. So here's that second pop quiz, just really fast. How many unique passwords are used for those accounts? Anybody want to guess? Yep, 8, and the same password for 12 of those. So if you have 100 accounts and you only have 8 passwords.
So having worked for state and local government, they've had to be careful. I think the most important piece of information is how do they
how do people get in touch with you?
So you can go to our website, but if we fast forward through all this other fun stuff. So everybody has a plan until they get punched in the face? Yeah. That's me. I get called at 2 o'clock in the morning. I get called at 3 o'clock in the morning. I get called on my lunch breaks. I don't sleep so that you can. Literally, I have been up, so I got up at 5 o'clock this morning so I could drive from Atlanta in order to come out and talk to all of you today. As soon as I get off this stage, I'm going to jump in my car. I'll be back down in Atlanta because I have to be in the Network Operations Center for the FIFA World Cup until 1 a.m. And then I have to be back to the Operations Center at 9 a.m. to go again until 1 a.m. and then do the same thing on Sunday and Monday and Tuesday. So that is our role, is to be there for you. If you send me an email or if you give me a text or if you call me, you can also hit me up on LinkedIn. I'm not allowed to really officially say that. I will respond to you and get you in touch with one of my team members, and they will start taking care of you from there. If you're ever not getting the response from us, and we do more than just cybersecurity too, we have physical security team members. So we have what we call our protected security advisors. We also have our emergency communications specialists. We have so many services, and we are here to assist you. So once again, my name is Clint Walker. I'm from the federal government, and I'm here to help. Thank you all so much. Questions?
I got a question over here. Here you go.
Is it how awesome am I?
Oh, that's a great talk.
Very.
Thanks so much. So you said let's say the IT department is trying to tell the upper management, hey, we need to secure these machines, and upper management may not be listening or say, well, we don't need to do that. Are you saying they can contact you and you'll talk with upper management, say, hey, this is really important?
Yes. That's one of the things that we do is I get with IT directors all the time and I tell them, look, I'm not going to say anything different than you're saying. I'm just going to say it on behalf of the federal government. They're probably going to listen to me. Matter of fact, I will usually sit down with you and say, exactly what do you want me to say? One of the best assessments we have is what we call the Cyber Resilience Review. At least I'm hoping they let us keep this assessment. It's on the fence right now whether they're going to let us keep it or not. But it's an 8-hour assessment. It goes through all 10 domains of cybersecurity. And it is the best look at your resiliency across all of your operating lines that there is. I absolutely love this assessment. And usually when we brief the results of that assessment to upper management, they start to look at you with a totally different, mindset, saying, wow, we didn't realize how far behind we were the curve. They're making business decisions. They're making operational decisions based on a feeling of security that just isn't there. One of the first things I teach a lot of CISOs when I talk to them is like, how often do you talk to your board of directors? How often do you talk to your C-suite? A lot of them say, I usually get one time a year that I can talk to them. And I get to show them the state of the cybersecurity program, and I get one shot to do that. And I'm like, well, that's your problem right there, is you only get one shot, because they think of cybersecurity as one program. Cybersecurity is actually 10 separate programs. Asset management, situational awareness, vulnerability management, incident response. When you start to break down, if you start briefing them on each aspect of cybersecurity independent and stop saying this is how we look about cybersecurity across the board, but start to show them how each program operates independent of everything else, they start to say, wow, that's a whole lot of stuff that is cybersecurity coverage. It's like, yeah. And we're green in incident response, but we're red in asset management, which means we're going to be leaning on our incident response a whole lot because we don't even understand where all of our assets are. When you start to pitch it to them like that, they start to understand a little bit more about how much is on your plate and about how insecure they really are. And they start to make different decisions. Their risk tolerance level really changes. And we can come in and help you with all of that. We can help you figure out how you want to talk to your C-suite, because every C-suite's different. They want to be talked to differently, but we can help you determine that. That's a lot of where our expertise is. Almost everybody on my team has been a CISO before. And so we can smell our own. And so, we understand the vulnerabilities that you have. We understand that you have limited resources, you have limited budget, you have limited ability to actually, enact your will upon your organization. And we can help you with all of that.
Thank you so much, Clint. We'll have a short break now. Thanks.